Greek Muslims, also known as Greek-speaking Muslims, are Muslims of Greek ethnic origin whose adoption of Islam dates to the period of Ottoman rule in the southern Balkans. They consist primarily of the descendants of the elite Ottoman Janissary corps and Ottoman-era converts to Islam from Greek Macedonia, Crete, northeastern Anatolia and the Pontic Alps. They are currently found mainly in western Turkey and northeastern Turkey. Despite their ethnic Greek origin, the contemporary Grecophone Muslims of Turkey regarding their identity have been steadily assimilated into the Turkish-speaking Muslim population. Apart from their elders, sizable numbers, even the young within these Grecophone Muslim communities have retained a knowledge of Greek and or its dialects such as Cretan Greek and Pontic Greek, though very few are likely to call themselves Greek Muslims. This is due to gradual assimilation into Turkish society, as well as the close association of Greece and Greeks with Orthodox Christianity and the perceived status as a historic, military threat to the Turkish Republic. Whereas in Greece, Greek-speaking Muslims are not usually considered as forming part of the Greek nation. In the late Ottoman period, several communities of Grecophone Muslims from Crete and southern Greece were also relocated to Libya, Lebanon and Syria, where in towns like Al-Hamidiyya some of the older generation continue to speak Greek. Historically, Greek Orthodoxy has been associated with being Romeos, i.e., Greek, and Islam with being Turkish, despite ethnic or linguistic references. Most Greek-speaking Muslims in Greece left for Turkey during the 1920s population exchanges under the Convention concerning the exchange of Greek and Turkish populations. Due to the historical role of the millet system, religion and not ethnicity or language was the main factor used during the exchange of populations. All Muslims who departed Greece were seen as Turks, whereas all Orthodox people leaving Turkey were considered Greeks, regardless of ethnicity or language. An exception was made for Muslims in East Macedonia and Thrace, northern Greece, who are officially recognized as a religious, but controversially not as an ethnic minority by the Greek government. In Turkey, where most Greek-speaking Muslims live, there are various groups of Grecophone Muslims, some autochthonous, some from parts of present-day Greece and Cyprus who migrated to Turkey under the population exchanges or immigration. Reasons for conversion to Islam. Devzirma was one of the organized practices by which the Ottomans took boys from their Christian families, who were later converted to Islam with the aim of selecting and training the ablest of them for leading positions in the Ottoman society. As a rule, the Ottomans did not require the Greeks to become Muslims, although a minority did so in order to avert the socio-economic hardships of Ottoman rule, take advantage of greater employment prospects and possibilities of advancement in the Ottoman government bureaucracy and military, or simply because of the corruption of the Greek clergy. Subsequently, these people became part of the Muslim community of the millet system, which was closely linked to Islamic religious rules. At that time, people were bound to their millets by their religious affiliations, rather than to their ethnic origins. Muslim communities prospered under the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman law did not recognize such notions as ethnicity, and the Muslims of any ethnic background enjoyed precisely the same rights and privileges. Another major reason for converting to Islam was the well-organized taxation system based on religion. Major taxes were the defter nisbans and the more severe harak, whereby a document was issued which stated that the holder of this certificate is able to keep his head on the shoulders since he paid the chi alpha rho alpha tau sigma iota tax for this year. All these of course were waived if the person would convert and become Muslim. During the Greek War of Independence, Ottoman Egyptian troops under the leadership of Ibrahim Pasha of Egypt ravaged the island of Crete and the Greek countryside of the Morea, where the Muslim Egyptian soldiers enslaved vast numbers of Christian Greek children and women. Ibrahim arranged for the enslaved Greek children to be forcefully converted to Islam en masse. The enslaved Greeks were subsequently transferred to Egypt, where they and sold as slaves. Several decades later, in 1843, the English traveller and writer Sir John Gardner Wilkinson described the state of enslaved Greeks who had converted to Islam in Egypt. White slaves. In Egypt, there are white slaves and slaves of color. There are, for example, some Greeks who were taken in the War of Independence. In Egypt, the officers of rank are for the most part enfranchised slaves. I have seen in the bazaars of Cairo Greek slaves who had been torn from their country at the time it was about to obtain its liberty. I have seen them afterwards holding nearly all the most important civil and military grades, and one might be almost tempted to think that their servitude was not a misfortune, if one could forget the grief of their parents on seeing them carried off at a time when they hoped to bequeath to them a religion free from persecution, and a regenerated country. Greek Muslims of Pontus and the Caucasus. Muslims of Pontic Greek origins, speakers of Pontic Greek, is spoken by sizable numbers along communities spread out near the southern Black Sea coast. Grecophone Pontian Muslims are found within Trabzon province and inhabit the following areas. Pontic is spoken in the town of Tonya and in 6 villages of Tonya district. It is spoken in 6 villages of the municipal entity of Biscoy in the central and Koprivasi districts of Samin. Grecophone Muslims are also located in 9 villages of the Galiana Valley in Makkah district. They were resettled there in former abandoned Greek Orthodox Pontian dwellings from the area of Biscoy after a devastating flood in 1929. The largest cluster of Pontian speakers is found in the valley. There are 23 Grecophone Muslim villages in Kaikara district. Though due to migration these numbers have fluctuated, and according to native speakers of the area there were around 80 Grecophone Muslim villages in Kaikara district. 12 Grecophone Muslim villages are also located in the Dernak Pazari district. Over the years, heavy emigration from the Trabzon region to other parts of Turkey to places such as Istanbul, Sakarya, Zonguldak, Bursa and Adapazari has occurred, while emigration to places outside Turkey has also transpired when people left for Germany as invited workers during the 1960s. Sizable numbers of Grecophone Muslims in Pontus have retained knowledge and are fluent in Greek, and it is a mother tongue for many, and even the young males are usually bilingual in both Turkish and Pontic Greek, while there are many women who are monolingual only in Pontic Greek. Grecophone Muslim Pontians can also be found in other settlements such as Rize, Erzincan, Gümüşhane, parts of Erzurum province, and the former Russian Empire's province of Kars Oblast and Georgia. Today these Greek-speaking Muslims regard themselves and identify as Turks. In Turkey, their communities are sometimes referred to as Rum, although as with the word Yunan meaning Greek in Turkish or Greek in the English language, the term Rum is perceived within Turkey to be associated with Greece and or Christianity, and they refuse to be identified as such. Grecophone Muslim Pontians, when speaking their language, refer to it as Romika, whereas when conversing in Turkish they call it Rumkar or Rumchika. Rumkar is the name used in Turkish to call all Greek dialects spoken in Turkey. A term akin to Romika derived from the word Rho Omega Mu Alpha Iota Kappa Alpha, or Roman with Byzantine origins. Current-day Greeks refer to their language as Epsilon Lambda Lambda Eta Nu Iota Kappa Alpha, or Greek, an appellation that replaced the previous term Romaika during the early 19th century. In Turkey, Standard Modern Greek is referred to as Yunanka, whereas the ancient Greek language is called Eski Yunanka or Greksa. According to Heath W. Lowry's great work about Ottoman Taksh books with Halil and Alsik, it is claimed that most Turks of Trebizond in the Pontic Alps region in northeastern Anatolia are of Pontic Greek origin. Grecophone Pontian Muslims are known in Turkey for their conservative adherence of Sunni Islam of the Hanafi school and are renowned for producing many Quranic teachers. Sufi orders such as Qadiri and Naqshbandi have a great impact. many of those defined as Ottoman following Lala Mustafa Pasha's Caucasian campaign that led to the Ottoman conquest of Georgia in 1578, were actually of Armenian or Pontic Greek origin, whose forefathers in northeastern Anatolia and the Pontic Alps had adopted Turkish Islam and joined the Ottomans. Before settling in Georgia, there they often retained an awareness of their Armenian or Pontic Greek identities and continued to use their ancestral languages, or they simply assimilated through intermarriage with other Muslims from the South Caucasus of Georgian, Laz, Ossetian, or Turkish origin. It is still unclear how many or even whether some of these Pontic Grecophone Muslims of Georgia later reverted to their ancestral Greek orthodoxy, and intermarried with the Christian Pontic Greeks in Georgia and Caucasus Greeks who had settled in the country in various waves between the fall of the Empire of Trebizond in 1461 and the Second Russo-Turkish War in 1828. One well-known Ottoman Georgian of Pontic Greek origin was Resid Mehmed Pasha, who ironically played an important role in the Ottoman attempt to crush the Greek War of Independence in central and northwestern Greece in the 1820s. Cretan Muslims. The term Cretan Turks or Cretan Muslims covers Greek-speaking Muslims who arrived in Turkey after or slightly before the start of the Greek rule in Crete in 1908, and especially in the framework of the 1923 Agreement for the Exchange of Greek and Turkish populations, and have settled on the coastline stretching from the Çanakkale to Iskenderun. Prior to their resettlement to Turkey, deteriorating communal relations between Cretan Greek Christians and Grecophone Cretan Muslims had made the latter identify with Ottoman and later Turkish identity. Some Grecophone Muslims of Crete also composed literature for their community in the Greek language, such as songs, and wrote it in the Arabic alphabet, although little of it has been studied. Today in various settlements along the Aegean coast, elderly Grecophone Cretan Muslims are still conversant in Cretan Greek. Amongst younger generations of Cretan Grecophone Muslims, many are fluent in the Greek language. Often members from the Muslim Cretan community are unaware that the language they speak is Greek. They often name the language as Cretan or Giriche instead of Greek. The Grecophone Cretan Muslims are Sunnis of the right, with a highly influential Bektashi minority that helped shape the folk Islam and religious tolerance of the entire community. Significant numbers of Cretan Muslims were resettled in other Ottoman-controlled areas around the eastern Mediterranean by the Ottomans following the establishment of the autonomous Cretan state in 1898. Most ended up in coastal Syria and Lebanon, particularly the town of Al-Hamidiyya in Syria, and Tripoli in Lebanon, where many continue to speak Greek as their mother tongue. Others were resettled in Ottoman Tripolitania, especially in the east side cities like Susa and Benghazi, where they are distinguishable by their Greek surnames. Many of the older members of this community still speak Cretan Greek in their homes. A small community of Grecophone Cretan Muslims still resides in Greece in the Dodecanese islands of Rhodes and Kos. These communities were formed prior to the area becoming part of Greece in 1948, when their ancestors migrated there from Crete and integrated into the local Muslim population as Turks today. Epirot Muslims. Muslims from the region of Epirus, known collectively as Yanulila in Turkish, and Tau Omicron Upsilon Rho Kappa Omicron Gamma Iota Alpha Nu Iota Omega Tau Epsilon Sigma Turco Yaniotes in Greek, who had arrived in Turkey in two waves of migration in 1912 and after 1923. After the exchange of populations, Grecophone Epirot Muslims resettled themselves in the Anatolian section of Istanbul, especially the districts from Erenköy to Kartal, which were previously populated by wealthy Orthodox Greeks. Although the majority of the Epirot Muslim population was of Albanian origin, Grecophone Muslim communities existed in the towns of Soli, Margariti, Ioannina, Preveza, Louros, Paramythia, Konitsa, and elsewhere in the Pindus mountain region. Regarding their identity, the Greek-speaking Muslim populations, who were a majority in Ioannina and Paramythia and with sizable numbers residing in Paga and possibly Preveza, shared the same root of identity construction, with no evident differentiation between them and their Albanian-speaking cohabitants. Hokri Sad Effendi, a Greek-speaking Muslim from Ioannina who lived in the 18th century, was the first translator of Aristotle into Turkish. Some Grecophone Muslims of Ioannina also composed literature for their community in the Greek language, such as poems, and wrote it in the Arabic alphabet. The community now is fully integrated into Turkish culture. Those Muslims from Epirus of mainly Albanian rather than Greek convert origin are usually described as Cham Albanians. Macedonian Greek Muslims. Greek-speaking Muslims lived in the Halikamon of Western Macedonia. They were known collectively as Valahadis and had probably converted to Islam en masse in the late 1700s. Although the Valahadis had retained much of their Greek culture and language, unlike most Muslim converts from Greek Macedonia and elsewhere in the southern Balkans who generally adopted the Turkish language and identity. In contrast, most Grecophone Muslims from Epirus, Thrace, and other parts of Macedonia who converted to Islam in the earlier Ottoman period, generally also adopted Turkish and more speedily and thoroughly assimilated into the Ottoman ruling elite. According to Tadusimovsky's assessment, in 1912 in the region of Macedonia in Greece there were 13,753 Muslim Greeks. In the 20th century, the Valahadis were considered by other Greeks to have become Turkish and were not exempt from the 1,922–1,923 population exchange between Greece and Turkey, which was based on religious affiliation rather than language and ethnicity. The Valahadis were resettled in Western Asia Minor, in such towns as Kumburgaz, Büyükçekmece, and Katalkar, or in villages like Honaz near Denizli. Many Valahadis still continue to speak the Greek language, which they call Romaka, and have become completely assimilated into the Turkish Muslim mainstream as Turks. Cypriot Muslims. In 1878, the Muslim inhabitants of Cyprus were classified as being either Turkish or Neo-Muslim. The latter were of Greek origin, Islamized but speaking Greek, and similar in character to the local Christians. The last of such groups was reported to arrive at Antalya in 1936. These communities are thought to have abandoned Greek in the course of integration. During the 1950s, there were still 4 Greek-speaking Muslim settlements in Cyprus: Lapithau, Platonisso, Iosimian and Galinaporni, that identified themselves as Turks. Crimea. In the Middle Ages, the Greek population of Crimea traditionally adhered to Eastern Orthodox Christianity, even despite undergoing linguistic assimilation by the local Crimean Tatars. In 1777 to 1778, when Catherine the Great of Russia conquered the peninsula from the Ottoman Empire, the local Orthodox population was forcibly deported and settled north of the Azovc. In order to avoid deportation, some Greeks chose to convert to Islam. Crimean Tatar-speaking Muslims of the village of Kermanshik kept their Greek identity and were practicing Christianity in secret for a while. In the 19th century, the lower half of Kermanshik was populated with Christian Greeks from Turkey, whereas the upper remained Muslim. By the time of the Stalinist deportation of 1944, the Muslims of Kermanshik had already been identified as Crimean Tatars, and were forcibly expelled to Central Asia together with the rest of Crimea's ethnic minorities, Lebanon and Syria. There are about 7,000 Greek-speaking Muslims living in Tripoli, Lebanon, and about 8,000 in Al-Hamidiyah, Syria. The majority of them are Muslims of Cretan origin. Records suggest that the community left Crete between 1866 and 1897, on the outbreak of the last Cretan uprising against the Ottoman Empire, which ended the Greco-Turkish War of 1897. Sultan Abdul Hamid II provided Cretan Muslim families who fled the island with refuge on the Levantine coast. The new settlement was named Hamidiyya after the Sultan. Many Grecophone Muslims of Lebanon somewhat managed to preserve their Cretan Muslim identity and Greek language unlike neighboring communities. They are monogamous and consider divorce a disgrace. Until the Lebanese Civil War, their community was close-knit and entirely endogamous. However, many of them left Lebanon during the 15 years of the war. Greek-speaking Muslims constitute 60% of Al-Hamidiyya's population. The percentage may be higher but is not conclusive because of hybrid relationship in families. The community is very much concerned with maintaining its culture. The knowledge of the spoken Greek language is remarkably good and their contact with their historical homeland has been possible by means of satellite television and relatives. They are also known to be monogamous. Today, Grecophone Hamidiyya residents identify themselves as Cretan Muslims, while some others as Cretan Turks. By 1988, many Grecophone Muslims from both Lebanon and Syria had reported being subject to discrimination by the Greek embassy because of their religious affiliation. The community members would be regarded with indifference and even hostility, and would be denied visas and opportunities to improve their Greek through trips to Greece, Central Asia. In the Middle Ages, after the Seljuk victory over the Byzantine Emperor Romanus IV, many Byzantine Greeks were taken as slaves to Central Asia. The most famous among them was Al-Kazini, a Byzantine Greek slave taken to Merv, then in the Khorasan province of Persia but now in Turkmenistan, who was later freed and became a famous Muslim scientist.